You ever been in a room so quiet you can hear people's hearts breaking? That's what it felt like July 1975, just after lunch, in Martin Fletcher's law office right in the middle of Grundy Center. We were all crammed in there for grown kids waiting to hear how our dad's whole life 74 years of sweat, prayers, and ground-up tractor parts was about to get split up. Me, my three brothers, and Mr. Fletcher, who'd been our family's lawyer since before any of us were born. That's how old farm tradition works. Nobody really gets a warning before the hammer drops. Let me set the scene. My dad, Robert Carson, had farmed those 720 acres since 1928. He knew every inch, every stone that broke a plow, every low spot that drowned out beans, every fence that needed mending after the spring thaw. And for almost half a century, that land was his world. Us kids, we all had our own paths. James, the oldest, had worked beside Dad since '52. Michael bought his own spread, but always came running at planting or harvest. David took off for Des Moines, crunching numbers as an accountant, but promised he'd come back someday. And Mule, I stuck around. Never left Grundy County. I had a house in town, worked the books at the co-op, but every night and weekend, I was out there helping Dad with records, equipment, field work, selling grain, whatever he needed. So that Wednesday, we're all lined up in a row, facing Mr. Fletcher as he opens the will. There's the usual legal stuff, sound mind. Final wishes, then he starts handing out the farm. James gets the north quarter, home place, every building. He nods, no surprise. Michael gets the east quarter. Good, flat ground. He grins. David, who's barely seen dirt in 15 years, gets the south quarter. He looks surprised happy, though. And then there's me. To my daughter, Sarah Carson, I leave my 1958 Farmall-Age tractor, serial number FBH 35847, free and clear of all encumbrances. That's it. Just a tractor. 17 years old, worth about as much as a used car. I'll never forget the silence thick enough to choke on. My brothers stare at their hands, at the floor, anywhere but at me. James finally breaks it. That's it. Sarah just gets a tractor. I could see Martin double-checking the paper, but we all heard right. 3 boys, 240 acres each land. That would go for about 900 grand altogether in 75 prices. Me? I get a machine with faded paint and a worn seat. I didn't say anything. Didn't even cry, though my stomach was flipping. The thing is, I'd seen this coming. Dad was old school. In his mind, farms were for sons. Daughters got something to remember him by a token. That's just how it was. Out in the parking lot, my brothers tried to make it right. Michael offered to chip in cash. James said it wasn't fair, but you know how Dad was land stays with the men. I told them no. No chitty. I'd take what I got and make do. I drove home, sat at my kitchen table, stared at the tractor's title. That was my inheritance. My empire. I could have been angry. I could have taken them to court, tried to get a fair share. But you know what? Anger doesn't pay bills. Lawsuits don't plant fields. And the only family I had left was sitting in that parking lot, just as shell-shocked as I was. I realized something sitting there in the quiet. Land is just dirt if you can't make it work, and a tractor, well, if you know what you're doing, it's an opportunity. You might think I was crazy, but within a week, I started hunting for land to rent. Grundy County's full of old farmers, bodies giving out, no kids wanting the life. First stop, Herman Mueller, 80 acres next to Dad's place. He was skeptical. Sarah, you're a woman, can you handle 80 acres? I told him, I helped farm 720 for 20 years. I can handle 80. Offered him $85 an acre, cash rent, above market. He gave me a chance one year. Arthur Jensen was next, another 80. His doctor told him to slow down, and he knew I knew what I was doing. By the end of July, I had 160 acres to farm. Didn't own an inch, but I had ground under my boots. Now, farming takes money, and banks don't love loaning to women with no land. I put my house up as collateral, $25,000, free and clear. I needed 18 grand for seed, fertilizer, fuel. Roger, the loan officer, thought I was nuts. You're risking everything, he said. If the crop fails, you lose your home. I told him I understood. Signed the papers. Sometimes that's what it takes. Word got around fast. My brothers couldn't believe it. James called, half panicked, half angry. You're going to go broke. You don't even own the land. I told him maybe, but it's more than most folks start with. They just couldn't get interest, wasn't in their blood, not like it was in mine. That first year, I worked harder than I ever had in my life. Did it all myself, plowed, planted, sprayed, harvested, sold the grain. The farm LH was old. No cap, just an umbrella for shade. But it was paid for. That meant I could live on thin margins, cut costs every place I could. At the end of the season, after rent, inputs, and the bank's cut, I cleared $7,200. Barely enough to scrape by, but it was profit. I saved most of it. Ate beans and potatoes all winter. My brothers? They all farmed their inherited acres, but Dad's old equipment got sold to pay off estate costs, so they had to borrow for new tractors, planters, bins. They were deep in debt right out of the gate, 40, 50, 60 grand apiece. Every year, the payments stacked up. They looked successful, bought new trucks, took vacations. Me, I drove a rusty car, lived cheap, but I was stacking cash. When the AG crisis hit and the 80s interest rates through the roof, grain prices dropping, they started losing sleep. Couldn't cover the payments. Little by little, their land slipped away. One brother foreclosed in 84, another in 86, the last in 88. Auction after auction, land that had been in our family for half a century, gone to the bank. Meanwhile, I just kept on, paid off the operating loan, kept renting, kept saving. By 87, I'd managed to sock away $58,000. That's when I finally bought my own land, 160 acres from a neighbor's widow, cash down, and a mortgage for the rest. Scary as hell, but I made it work. From there, things snowballed. The land crisis bottomed out, prices crept up, and I had cash when nobody else did. Every time a piece of our old farm came up at auction, first Michael's acres. Then James and I scraped together every penny, outbid the competition, and brought it back under my name. By 2005, at age 70, I owned 640 acres, almost the entire farm my dad built. Land values soared. I could have retired rich, but I loved the work. I kept farming until I was 82. In 2018, I sold it all, every acre, for over $1.6 million, clear more than $2 million after taxes and debt. Not bad for a woman who started with nothing but an old tractor. My brothers? They worked jobs, retired with not much to show for it. I don't say that to gloat. It's just the way it went. Years later, my nephew asked if I was mad about that will. I'll be honest, at first, I was furious. I thought Dad had slapped me in the face, like 20 years of late nights and dirty hands didn't count. But as time passed, I realized he gave me something better than Landa gave me: hunger. He gave me the push to build something myself, to stay sharp, to never get lazy or think the world owed me anything. You see, inheriting wealth without knowing how to keep it well, that's a curse. My brothers started with everything and lost it because nobody ever made them fight for it. I started with nothing, and I learned to make every dollar count. I learned discipline. Ownership without wisdom is just a time bomb. Looking back, I see that sometimes the worst inheritance is the best teacher. Sometimes starting with nothing makes you stronger than starting with everything. Sometimes the daughter everyone overlooked becomes the one who saves the family legacy, 1 acre, 1 season, 1 hard lesson at a time. So, let me ask you, if you'd been in my boots, would you have fought for a piece of the dream or walked away angry? When push comes to shove, is it better to get a fair share or to make your own luck? I'd love to hear your story. Drop it in the comments. Maybe you've had your own taste of unfair inheritance. Let's talk about what's really fair and who gets to decide.
Cảm ơn tất cả các bạn đã xem video.